When the future becomes blurry and your heart feels heavy, you often think that life is turning its back on you. You look out at the world and everything seems unstable. Plans not yet formed, relationships not yet complete, nameless worries quietly clinging to you like a shadow. But if you observe more deeply, you will realize what exhausts you the most is not the situation, but the way your mind reacts to it. It is the repetitive thoughts, the assumptions that have never happened, the endless what-if questions. They weave a second reality, an imagined one, yet carrying very real weight. You are not only living in the outside world, but also trapped in the inner world, where everything is often exaggerated, distorted, and colored by anxiety. In moments like these, your mind is no longer a refuge. It becomes a battlefield. There you are both the observer and the one caught in the fight. One part of you tries to control, to understand, to find answers, but another part continuously creates more questions, more fears, more pressure, and you are stuck in between, exhausted, yet unable to stop. The thing is, this battle has no real enemy. No one is attacking you from the outside. It is all just waves of thoughts coming and going. But because you believe in them, you give them power. And so, a passing thought can turn into a worrying that lasts all day, even an entire phase of your life. Buddhism saw this clearly thousands of years ago. It does not deny human suffering, but it points to a deeper truth. Suffering does not come from circumstances, but from attachment to what the mind creates. The mind in Buddhist teachings is often compared to a wild monkey, never still, always jumping from one branch to another, from the past to the future, from hope to fear. It never stops talking, commenting, judging, and if you do not recognize its nature, you will unconsciously believe that everything it says is true. But the truth is, thoughts are just thoughts. They are not reality. A fear appearing in your mind does not mean it will happen. A painful memory returning does not mean you are reliving it. A negative prediction is not a prophecy. All of it is just the movement of the mind, like clouds passing through the sky. But because you forget that you are the sky, you think you are those clouds, and so you try to control every thought, push away the negative ones, hold on to the positive ones. But the more you try, the deeper you get pulled in. Because the mind cannot be controlled by the mind itself, it is like trying to put out a fire by pouring more fuel. The more you do, the stronger the flames become. Buddhism does not teach you to defeat the mind. It teaches you to understand it, to understand that the mind is in constant motion, to understand that thoughts come and go without needing your intervention, to understand that you do not have to believe everything that appears in your head. And when you begin to see this, a small distance starts to form, a distance between you and your thoughts. That distance is freedom. Within that space, you are no longer carried away by every stream of thought. You begin to observe them, like someone standing by a river bank, watching the water flow without needing to jump in. You see worrying arise, then fade away. You see fear come, then go. You hear the mind say many things, but no longer feel the need to react to all of them. And for the first time, you realize stillness is not the absence of thought. It is when you are no longer controlled by thoughts. That is the path Buddhism points to. Not escaping the world, but returning to yourself. Not searching for a place without storms, but finding a steady point within the storm. That point has always been there, right inside you, but because you have been too busy chasing thoughts, you did not notice it. And perhaps in this very moment, when you pause for a bit, take a deep breath and simply notice that you are breathing, you have already touched it. No effort needed, no need to change anything, just return. That is the first step, and also the most important step on the journey back to peace. Even when the path becomes treacherous and you feel as if you are walking through a darkness with no way out, that is precisely when the deepest transformations can occur, not because pain is something good, but because the way you move through it can completely change who you are. Buddhism does not promise that life will become easy. It does not say that you will avoid loss, disappointment, or moments of breaking, but it offers you something far more valuable, a different way of seeing, a way of seeing deep enough that you are no longer drowned by what happens, but able to stand steady within the experience itself. When you begin to see every difficulty as part of a transformational journey, something strange happens. You no longer rush to escape. You no longer try to deny or suppress your emotions. Instead, you begin to stay. Stay with the discomfort. Stay with the sadness. Stay with the unanswered questions. And it is within that staying that a door opens. At first, you may only feel the chaos, tangled thoughts, unnamed emotions. But if you are patient enough, you will begin to see more clearly. You will realize that pain is not a solid, unchanging block as you once thought. It has structure, it has causes, it has layers you had never noticed before. You may realize that what hurts you is not the event itself, but the way you interpret it. A careless word becomes a wound because you believe it defines your worth. A departure becomes a deep loss because you have placed the meaning of your entire life into it. And when you see this, you begin to understand. Pain does not only come from the outside, it is nurtured from within, from beliefs, expectations, and attachments you have never fully faced. This realization is not meant for you to blame yourself. On the contrary, it gives you power, because when you see the root, you no longer feel helpless. You are no longer a victim of things beyond your control. You become someone capable of understanding and transforming. That is the deeper meaning of turning poison into medicine, not by immediately changing your circumstances, but by changing your relationship with those circumstances. A challenge is no longer just an obstacle, it becomes a mirror, reflecting the parts of you that need to be seen, healed, and released. When one door closes, you may feel pain. That is natural. But instead of sinking into the question, why me, you begin to shift to another question. What is this showing me that I have been overlooking? Perhaps it is a lesson about setting boundaries. Perhaps it is a reminder that you have forgotten yourself in trying to please others. Perhaps it is an opportunity to realize that your worth does not depend on whether someone stays or leaves. These realizations do not come instantly. They require time, they require honesty, and above all, they require the courage not to turn away from your own experience. On this journey, patience becomes an essential quality, because your mind will constantly try to pull you back into old patterns. It will say that everything is too hard, that you cannot change, that letting go is impossible. But each time you pause, each time you breathe, each time you choose to observe instead of react, you are creating a very small shift, and those small shifts accumulated over time will reshape the way you live, and the way you see the world. Gradually, you realize that you do not need to control everything to feel at peace. You do not need everything to go your way. You begin to trust the flow of life more, not as blind faith, but as an understanding that everything is unfolding through deeper causes and conditions that you may not fully see. This trust does not make you passive. On the contrary, it helps you act with greater clarity. You are no longer driven by fear or lack. You act from a more grounded place, where you know that no matter the outcome, you can face it and learn from it. And then one day, when you look back, you may realize that the most difficult moments in your life were actually the ones that opened the most important doors, not because they were pleasant, but because they forced you to pause, forced you to look deeper, forced you to grow in ways that ease never could. You began to see that life is not a series of random events. It is like a flow, where every turn, every challenge, every loss contributes to shaping who you are becoming. And when you truly understand that, you are no longer afraid when difficulties arise. You may still feel pain, but you are no longer overwhelmed. You may still feel lost, but you are no longer in despair, because somewhere very deep within, you know that even in the darkest moments, there is always a light waiting for you to discover, and that light has never left you. Try to look back slowly, as if you're standing at the edge of your own life, observing everything that has passed. The peaceful days, the long restless nights, the times you felt like collapsing but still got back up. Not perfectly, but enough to keep going. You will realize something very strange. No moment has ever truly defeated you. No matter how weak you felt at the time, no matter if you thought you couldn't endure even one more second, you are still here, still breathing, still listening to these words, and that, in itself, is a quiet proof of a strength you may have never fully acknowledged. Fear, in the end, has never truly wanted to destroy you. It is only trying to protect you in the way it knows, sometimes clumsy, sometimes extreme, but always rooted in a very deep survival instinct. And when you begin to understand that, a subtle shift happens. You no longer resist fear the way you used to. You begin to listen, not to be carried away by it, but to understand it, not to believe everything it says, but to recognize what lies behind those whispers. Perhaps it is a part of you that needs comfort. Perhaps it is a dream you have delayed for too long. Perhaps it is a new path you have not yet had the courage to step into. And when you listen with stillness, fear gradually loses its noise. It is no longer a violent wave pushing you away, but becomes a gentle ripple, enough for you to notice, but not enough to shake you. That is when faith begins to take root. Not a faith that everything will always go your way, but a faith that, no matter what happens, you can face it. You can learn, you can grow from the experience itself. This kind of faith does not come from theory. It is built from the times you have walked through darkness and still kept a small light within. It is nurtured from the moments you felt completely lost, yet still found a way, however faint, but enough to continue. And over time, that faith becomes a steady foundation, not something you have to try to hold on to, but something that naturally exists, like your breath, like your heartbeat, like the life quietly unfolding within you every day. You no longer need certainty about the future to feel at peace. You no longer need to control everything to feel safe. You begin to accept that life, with all its uncertainty, is not something to be solved, but something to be experienced, and within that acceptance, a very deep freedom appears. You are free from the need to always be right, free from the need to always be strong, free from the need to know every answer in advance. You allow yourself to be human, with all your limits, your wounds, but also with all your capacity to heal and transform. You begin to slow down, not because you have lost motivation, but because you are no longer driven by fear. You act, but without rushing. You choose, but without being obsessed with right or wrong. You move forward, but without carrying the burden of having to arrive immediately. And then, little by little, life opens up in a very different way. The things that once made you anxious no longer carry the same weight. Challenges still come, but you no longer see them as walls blocking your way, but as doors, sometimes difficult to open, but always leading to something new. You began to see beauty in very simple things: a deep breath, a quiet moment, a sense of relief. When you let go of a thought that is no longer needed, you realize that peace is not a distant destination, but a state you can touch at any moment. If you remember to return, and perhaps the most important thing you learn is not how to completely eliminate fear, but how to live with it, gently, mindfully, and no longer controlled by it. You do not need to become a perfect version of yourself. You only need to become more authentic, more present, more sensitive to what is happening within you, because it is within that presence that natural wisdom begins to reveal itself. Not grand answers, but very simple yet profound understandings that everything will change, that no emotion lasts forever, that you can always begin again right from this moment. So when you leave these words, do not carry too many expectations. Do not try to become better immediately. Just carry one thing: awareness. Awareness when your mind begins to tell old stories. Awareness when fear arises. Awareness when you are trying to control something beyond your reach. And in each moment of awareness, pause for a bit. Breathe and remember that you have another choice. A gentler choice, a more open choice, a more mindful choice. This journey has no clear ending. It is not a straight path, but a circle where you continuously return to yourself, each time more deeply, each time more fully. And if there comes a moment when you feel lost again, remember this: you do not need to go anywhere far to find peace again. You only need to return to the breath, return to this moment, return to yourself, the place where, no matter how far you have gone, stillness has always been waiting for you, never having left. And in that returning, everything begins to feel whole.